Welcome everybody. This is SharePoint Developer Ecosystem PMP Community Call, and this is the February 2020 call. It is February 11th, 2020. I finally getting the actual year. It just takes ages always cut there, but it's good that I'm getting to 2020 mode already. Now, today we'll actually do a quick recap first on the monthly summary, and there's some news again, as it's typical slides what we go through as well, and then we'll open up the forum for Ask Us Anything or AMA, Ask Me Anything discussions. And the whole point of this one is to make sure that we have the right set of people, as in the engineering people from Microsoft in present and answering questions related on SharePoint Framework or SharePoint Framework vNext, whatever comes to your mind. So understanding where we're heading, where we are investing, what are the areas where what Microsoft looks as a dimension or where we're heading with SharePoint Framework, and whatever it will be called. Obviously, we will not announce yet whatever it will be called for the future. We talked about that one quite a few times in these community calls as well, that it takes, that we are looking into renaming potentially SharePoint Framework, because if you have new people coming in, for example, for Teams development, and that somebody says, hey, use SharePoint Framework to create Microsoft Teams stuff, and it's like, what? It doesn't make any sense. So, but more on that one later. Now, let's actually get moving on that one. Just quickly, reminders on that one, or introducing these people. So Pat Miller is the engineering lead related on SharePoint Framework. So he actually leads the team who actually is responsible for delivering SharePoint Framework. Luca Bandinelli is the principal program manager in the SharePoint Framework team, so owns the specs and features related on SharePoint Framework. So technically, how system works in Microsoft is that the PMs write specs, and then the engineering leads and engineering actually writes whatever the PMs comes to think of. Well, obviously, it's an interactive discussion. And then John Nguyen is a senior software engineer from the SharePoint Framework engineering team. So one of the really hardcore developers behind of the SharePoint Framework, responsible of many of the detailed internals of the SharePoint Framework thing. Now, moving on topics. First of all, a quick recap on the classic slides. So some of these slides, we did actually get feedback on the survey, on the community call survey, that why do you always go through all of the same slides? Well, we actually go them through because there was also more feedback on let's always recap the URLs, because there's always new people in the call and we need to recap what are we actually doing. So AKMS SPDev community, go there, use the tech community location where you can ask questions. There's other people in the community there as well. It is the Microsoft tech community, which is intended to be the forum where we actually have discussions with other people in the community. We have bi-weekly SharePoint Framework community call, which is happening on Thursdays at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Next call on that one is on Thursday 30th. We have a bi-weekly SharePoint General Dev, which is everything else except SharePoint Framework, so everything else except JavaScript development. So see some craft development, Power Apps integration, Microsoft Automate or Power Automate the integration. We should update that slide, by the way. And next call on that one is on Thursday, 20th of February. And then the monthly community call is more on engineering events. So we're always trying to get Microsoft engineering people owning a feature, like in this time SharePoint Framework, or owning a functionality like, let's say, Melissa Torres or Sean Squires or Naomi Moneypenny, and talk about one specific feature and functionality and demonstrate potentially that. Today, we're not actually going to do live demos of SharePoint Framework. That is by design, because we actually cover quite a lot of that stuff in the calls anyway. So we're not going to do that. More having a discussion where we are heading when we get to that stage of the call. But you're not forced, obviously, and intended necessarily to go in all of these setups and all of the calls. They are all getting recorded. You can actually run through the recordings and save some time if you need it. You are more than welcome to join all of them. But it's basically based on your interest and availability as well. So are you interested in our SharePoint Framework? How about provisioning? How about Craft? And you can choose which call you actually want to take. Now, a few other URLs which are super important to always know and remember is the SharePoint development documentation. I get so many emails and so many messages still almost on a day-to-day basis related on, okay, so how would I get started on SharePoint Framework, or how would I provision a modern SharePoint site? Well, it is all in our documentation. So AKMS SP DevDocs is the documentation location, and you can actually find typically all the relevant questions and topics answered over there. So all of the community calls and many other stuff is available from our YouTube channel, which is closing into 15,000 subscribers, which is actually quite nice, at AKMS SP Dev Videos. So have a look on there, and we're looking into doing more and more also non-dev topics there as well, because this quite often, especially in the Microsoft 365 and in SharePoint and on this area, it's not that black and white. Is something a dev topic or is it a non-dev topic? So things are overlapping, so it's not just about SharePoint Framework in that area as well. SharePoint Dev Issues, AKMS Dev Issues. So Dev Issues, if you have any of them, please let us know. We can help you on resolving them. And we have multiple open source efforts and open source locations for samples and guidance where to get started. Good. A few numbers related on things or the progress. January 2020, SharePoint Framework units worldwide grew 6.5%. And by default, we don't actually explicitly call out what is the number and how do we measure that. And that is by design, because it's not a, let's say, an easily understandable technique. How do we do that? But overall usage grew 6.5% worldwide. In our community side of the house, we had 49,000 views in the SharePoint Dev YouTube channel. We had 247,000 watch time minutes in the SharePoint Dev YouTube channel. And still, it would be so nice to be able to sell ads in that channel, but obviously we're not doing that. Total visitors in a related GitHub organization, 63,000. Our open source components, these are PnP Sites Core, PnP PowerShell, PnP JS, which are used widely worldwide, actually generated 7,814 requests every single second worldwide towards SharePoint Online. So you can figure out how many customers and how many production environments are using those components. So 32,000 tenants are actually using them in a tenant perspective, and 3,686 tenants which were using the PnP tenant templates, which is a widely adapted capability as well. Overall, in the GitHub, we have had now 1,244 contributors, and that number is growing quite hectically and all the time as well. So thank you for being more and more active on the GitHub and the community, because together we are so much smarter rather than competing between each other. So building stuff together, contributing stuff together, we can make sure that everybody else can actually learn how to take advantage of these platforms. Now, what about SharePoint Framework? Just to show you some graphs on that one, no explicit numbers, but again, we're back on track after the holiday. That holiday bump is quite typical because people are obviously not using that much our platform because they're hopefully spending time with their family. So that kind of holiday bumps are as expected, and we are back on the growth track on that one. Now, quick reminder, lookbook on Microsoft.com. We're promoting this quite heavily, but there is a reason. You can easily get really, really cool looking sites available. So all of our Ignite 2019 demo sites were using SharePoint lookbook sites, and you can easily integrate also these sites, for example, to Microsoft Teams. That's a super easy thing to do. Later this week, we'll show, actually, there will be a video coming out which will really easily show step-by-step how to get any of SharePoint portal sites easily available as a personal application in Microsoft Teams, which is something what people seem to be looking for, and it's not super difficult to do. So we'll actually get a video up and running on that one as well. It doesn't require any code even, so it's a no-code solution, which is pretty cool. A few reminders, other things. We haven't updated SharePoint Framework 1.10 tutorials in written and video format. So the written format of these tutorials were available as part of the 1.10 release, but now we have actually refreshed all of the videos as well. So if you're looking into getting started on SharePoint Framework and how to get started and the basics, there is a set of like 15 to 20 videos already, which are kind of a big getting started level. So super simple and showing the basics on the development side. And obviously not using just SharePoint Framework, but also using Microsoft Teams and Office add-ins and including Microsoft Graph usage. So super, super cool stuff. Now, a few other things just to promote. Also, the SharePoint Dev Weekly, the latest one went live today, where we talked with Sebastian Levert from Valo Intranet. And that was a really interesting discussion related on how the collaboration and portal culture, kind of the global intranet culture, is more and more moving now and transitioning to Microsoft Teams. Teams, and what does it mean for ISVs, and what does it mean for developers and end users as well. So really good discussion with Sebastian. Sebastian is a product lead from Valo Intranet ISV provider. So he has a lot of insights on how customers actually are using Microsoft 365 from that perspective. And that's also available in the YouTube channel or as a podcast. So either way you want to consume that material. Quick update on our user voice of things. So our top 10 UDEF user voice have not unfortunately changed since the last month. So we haven't actually have that much progress of tackling these things. We are 100% aware on the most requested capabilities, and there is progress. Unfortunately, I cannot give you an exact insight when the support for .NET Core with CSM is coming. It is now, I think it's the third most requested capability across the SharePoint right now, and people are aware in general in Microsoft that we need to get that one done. The manage them metadata term store operations for REST API are coming in Graph APIs relatively soon. And again, I can't give you an exact date, but it's happening in a matter of, how would I put it, not maybe in months, more closer to weeks, or maybe between the weeks and months. So the Graph APIs for taxonomy is coming, like we have stated before, and it's already in the level of internal testing. So it might be actually, well, it's coming quite soon. Allow to use develop custom modern SPFx forms is the number 3. We're not going to walk through all of these, and that's something which we're going to actually talk about slightly later in this call as well, because we do have the opportunity of asking those kind of things from the SharePoint Framework engineering team. So let's get back on that one as well, including a lot of the other topics on this list. Now, the user voice does matter for us a lot, so please keep on voting those things which actually you need, because the more votes you get to those items, the more internal pressure internally the Microsoft has then to get those things moving as well. So please be active on this side. Good. Our monthly summary of what has happened within the last month went live yesterday, Monday. So this was basically, again, a monthly summary, a February 2020 update. And in that monthly summary, we always call out the contributors, the companies who allowed their employees to contribute in our open source efforts, what has happened. So the latest videos, latest samples, latest articles, all being called out in this call as well. The easiest way to access all of this stuff is, the PMP address is http a.k.a. PMP, but then all of this information is available in the SharePoint Dev blog. Now, for the last month's contributors, these are the people who actually contributed within the last month. So during January 2020, calling out the people and calling out their company who they will work for, depending if that information is available within their GitHub profile or within their Twitter profile. I actually was forced to reduce the font size one more time again. So we're in a font size of 8 pixels in the slide, because otherwise the group of people do not fit in, which is actually great. Because this shows that people are willing and interest of contributing in our open source efforts, either on documentation, samples, or any of the other projects as well. So thank you for being active on this area, because that truly helps other people to get involved and understand what's possible, and that grows the whole ecosystem. So it's a win-win for everybody as we do this together, rather than, let's say, competing too much. And obviously it's understandable, there's certain level of a competition always, but there's much more beneficial to actually work things and basic things together rather than not sharing anything for anybody. Now, on the company side, so these are the company names which we are allowed to show and the logo. So if you were mentioned on the previous slide and your company is not here, that's because you haven't granted us the permission to show your logo. So please send an email or contact me or any of the other PMP PMP team members, and you need to explicitly call out that the company and you are allowed and send the logo and allow us to use the company logo there. And if we made a mistake, please let us know as well. We'll update the documentation and the blog post as well. Now, these are the companies, like I said, who allow their employees to actually contribute on the open source effort. And like I said, please let us know if your company is doing this and you are contributing as well. And Kase ready, it seems to Prasad. If we do have a mistake, please, if you do have a mistake, please let us know on your contribution, and we'll update the documentation and the blog post based on that. Now, on the Microsoft side of the house, there was quite a few Microsoft employees again contributing during this month, and this list is growing as well, which is great. So we're seeing Redmond people and, let's say, the field people, which is our TSPs, SPFx consultants, getting more and more involved in our community efforts as well. So it is a growing number of people, both internally and externally, which is super great. Moving on things, I think we have at least some of these people available in this call. That was the intention. So who do we have? Let me actually get to the participant list. And I'm seeing Luca at least on a call.
Yeah, I wanted to say I'm the only one, but then you will get a heart attack, and that's not good to have this kind of thing here. Okay. So the three of us, we are all here.
Good. So you're on the same line behind of your phone.
And turn the camera very quickly so you can see that it's true and it's not fake. John, Pat, and Luca here.
Yeah. Good. Excellent. Excellent. So what we wanted to do here is simply have an AMA session and ask us everything. So first of all, let's do a quick intro. So let's make sure that everybody, they introduce themselves. So to explain who they are and what's their responsibility.
Dude, you made my day. You made my day. I'm going to call Pat PM manager from now on. Good job there, Vesa.
So I'm Pat. I'm actually a dev manager or a dev.
Fair point. Fair point.
Although it seems like that's what I do mostly these days. But I am the dev lead for the SharePoint Framework.
And I'm Luca. I am now seriously Pat counterpart in the PM world. So I am the PM owning the SharePoint Framework.
And I'm John. I'm a senior engineer on Pat's team.
And I'm the last man mentioned there. If there's anything what these three persons cannot answer, which I doubt, I can come up with something which is close by. Let's put it this way. Now, how do we do this? It's the obvious what we are watching all the time on the chat window. I know that if the three persons are sitting right next to each other, they might not be able to really easily do that, but I'm watching the chat window as we're moving along. And also we got like 20, 25 different questions before the session, which actually are going through interesting amount of the future direction as well, which is really good. And let's do it in a way that I'm going to ask the question, and then we'll let those three persons to give the answer, and then we elaborate on that based on also chat or input through the chat. So if you have something to what you want to add on the discussion, please let us know using the chat window in Teams. And if the chat window in Teams, by the way, does not work for you, we do apologize on that one. There seems to be still some issues related on that one in the Microsoft Teams, and there's nothing we can actually do about it, unfortunately, at the time of the call.
Yeah, on something, just you know, Vesa, we've got a single line of text in the chat window, so if you repeat the questions we'll answer, but we can't see them.
Absolutely. I do have, like mentioned, I do have like 20 slides, so everybody can actually see the 20 slide questions, and then let's have a discussion on that topic. And let's start with something relatively simple. We touched this quite a few times in the SharePoint Framework and SharePoint Dev community calls, which is not really super important what we're going to call things, but do we already know what the SharePoint Framework is going to be named in the future?
No.
Was one of the questions.
That's not true. We have a couple of ideas. So one is Donald, the other one is Pluto. Goofy seems to be the one that is trending the most.
Goofy framework, okay.
Yes, correct.
And okay, that was a bad joke.
When we're being clever, John came up with the shared platform framework, which allows us to keep our same hashtag. And hashtag backwards compatibility is great.
And just to provide context to people that may not know why you are asking this question, maybe that's the case. So the reason why Vesa is asking this question is because there is an overall effort that we are working on to be able to basically position the SharePoint framework better on what the SharePoint framework is becoming today, thanks to all the support and adoption that you guys are providing to us. And right now, as you can see, we are expanding the SharePoint framework more and more above and beyond SharePoint. It's been a while where you were able to use SharePoint Framework to build the Teams tab. We introduced the ability to also create personal tabs and add-ins for Outlook Web Access, and we are working to expand on the Office family as well. So it seems conceivable that we want to name the tooling and the framework to something that resembles more the breadthness of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem instead of just SharePoint. Which doesn't mean that SharePoint goes away at all, which doesn't mean that the SharePoint framework is retiring to something new. That's absolutely not the case. It's absolutely the same framework that uses the same capabilities and functionalities powered by the great platform what SharePoint is, but it's just a branding exercise.
Yes. Yes, and there's just a comment from a chat from Srant related, maybe renamed as Microsoft 365 Framework. That's been mentioned a few times now. We don't actually, the people in this call are not the people who make that decision. And there's a market, it is a marketing decision, and there's multiple different examples what the name might be, but it's definitely most likely not SharePoint Framework, because building Microsoft Teams tabs using SharePoint Framework just doesn't mean a thing for a completely new developers. So, but we'll see how it goes. Not a super interesting development-oriented question, to be honest, more marketing question. Now, moving on the questions. The next one was from the survey which we put out. Will the Office adding model with SharePoint Framework be improved to avoid manual installation? And let me clarify this slightly. This was actually clarified in the question as well, which is pretty long. Right now, you can actually already preview Office Web Apps add-ins built using SharePoint Framework, but to be able to actually make all of that happen, there is a manual process for the end user to actually activate this add-in in their Outlook web access. How are we planning to improve this process in the future, and any thoughts on that?
The short answer is yes. This is one of the key pillars that we want to achieve before declaring support for Office add-ins general available.
So right now, there's two approaches. One approach is to mimic what the Sync to Teams button in the app catalog does. Before we can do that, we need API support for installing add-ins into the Office
Enterprise Catalog.
So there's that work, and then I think there's also a desire to have sort of a single installation point, not in SharePoint, just, hey, I want to install an app into Office 365. And if that comes along, we will sort of plug into that as well.
Right, which is one of the reasons why, hopefully there is not a slide on there, the app catalog is still in legacy UX. Is basically, we are having discussions and conversation to understand how much it makes sense to modernize the app catalog experience in SharePoint versus what Pat just said, which is transition the admin experience more at the Microsoft 365 level, considering the fact that now you can use SPFx to build solution for more than one Microsoft 365 canvas.
Yep. Excellent. That question actually is coming, Luca, but you're answering on that one in advance. So all good, all good. But basically, once again, recapping, so the current Office add-ins model is a preview model. It is only preview to demonstrate what we're thinking, what will happen when things are G8. And then as SharePoint Framework is now getting extended on Office add-ins and Teams and everything else, it's going to be more, let's say, fine-tuned experience one step at a time. Now, Russell Gove is, by the way, asking on the chat that will Office add-ins be able to get the context to both SharePoint and Outlook at the same time, because they're having issues related on that.
You can do that today. When you create an Office add-ins, we basically, and John and Pat will keep me honest here to more technical details, but we provide support for the Office.js, and through Office.js, you can get the context of the environment where your add-in is surfacing, is either in a mail in read mode or a mail in editing mode, yada yada, etc., etc.
Feel free to open up a GitHub issue and mention me. It's JOHNG UI0 on GitHub, and we can take a look.
Yeah, the API itself has both the SharePoint context, which is this.context.SDKs. And then the Office one is this.context.SDKs.office.
And that was for Russell, if you're having problems related on this one. I think you have actually an issue on that one, because we I think I've seen that at some point. But mentioned John or mention me, and I will mention John if you can't find John's tag from the GitHub. Either way, whatever works for you, or Pat, and we'll get the right answer. Thank you, David. Actually, David shared John's GitHub account on the chat, so now you will get mentioned on every single issue what's getting submitted. So thank you, John, for that. That's how it works.
So it's not that we were.
Next.
Good. Now, Oliver has a few questions on the chat window, one which we do not have a slide, so I'm going to ask that one on here. Any estimate on the race condition issues on getting a CRAF ADAL token for SPFx getting solved? So there are some race condition issues related on CRAF and ADAL token resolving, which is now harming Oliver's, Oliver is working for ISV. I think we have an issues reported on this in the issue list as well.
So in the past, there was one issue where there were multiple SPHTTP libraries getting installed, different versions getting installed onto the page at the same time, and both had conflicting chunks. So those would conflict, and I believe we've solved that. There might be an ADAL race condition, and we're continuously working with ADAL MSL guys on that. So yes, reference the GitHub issue. We can take another look at which issue you're hitting. The conflicting SPHTTP libraries, that's a straightforward fix. The MSL having race conditions, that's a bit more challenging, but we're working on it.
So Oliver, as a quick summary, you are pretty active already in the GitHub issue list. So mentioned Pat, me, John, and we'll get back on that one. So just trying to make sure that we get that one moving. Now, moving on next question on a slide, and I'll get back on some questions on the chat window as well. Now, are you planning to keep SharePoint Framework backward compatible? So there's a growing amount of actually people who are moving on SharePoint 2019, and there's a growing amount of questions related on-prem, which apparently is a thing. No, just kidding. I knew that it's a thing. But there's a concern related on the supportability of what SharePoint Framework versions in cloud, and then also are we planning to increase any doubt at the versions in on-premises? So what's the situation in here?
So are we planning on keeping it back to compatible? Yes. That's we've stated from the get-go, if you install a 1.0 solution into a product that supports it, it will continue to support it for the foreseeable future. As far as on-prem goes, so that the key point to a bunch of the future, like the 0.15 and beyond framework versions, is that it requires a bunch of support in the actual applications that are running it. So like the Pages app and the List app and stuff, in order to support the features that are going into it. And unless the underlying applications are bumped in the on-prem versions, then there's no support for the features that SPFx brings along. So long story short, if the on-prem builds themselves are upgraded to support the SPFx features, then we'll release an SPFx package we'll support the specific SPFx package with that release.
That was a super diplomatic way of putting that. But as a rule of thumb, it's very highly unlikely that we would change any of the versions which we would be running in on-premises, right?
Right, yeah. So in order for 2019, let's say, to support 1.8, the entire 2019 release would have to rev all of the code to a year or two newer to support that. And that's not going to happen. So it would be more what does SharePoint vNext on-prem be the time when there's another big chunk coming on.
We have not announced that we would be actually doing an on-premises version, but let's not speculate on that one on these calls, at least for now. Now, there's a comment from Sorat related on Microsoft products equals Microsoft 365 products, which is actually true. So everything goes first to the cloud, and then potentially there might be an on-premises version for those products where that makes sense. But quite a lot more and more we see the products being only in the cloud because of technical reasons as well, because running certain things in on-premise might be impossible, basically. Now, there was a good question from Fred on the chat window before we continue on the slides. Do you believe that one day SharePoint Framework or whatever it will be called can be used to extend the Windows, since both follow under the category of Microsoft 365? Are you targeting to extend all Microsoft products with SharePoint Framework in the near futures?
Maybe. I mean, clearly we are positioning. So SharePoint is today very good at two things, right? Great pages experience and document libraries and list experience. And with SharePoint Framework, we are proving that SharePoint is also great for as an application platform on top of Microsoft 365. That's why we are using that to extend Teams and tabs, Office add-ins, extending for people that were at the Ignite last year. Also, you have seen that the new Fluid preview can also take benefits of SharePoint Framework for extending widgets on top of the Fluid preview canvas. So maybe, I mean, that's not something that we are, to be completely honest and transparent, actively working on, but it's also true that it's not something that we are actively preventing to work on. So
yes.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to necessarily rule anything out in the future. I mean, if you think about it, when we did SPFx 1.0, we never really thought about, Teams or Office. So these things sort of kind of evolve naturally based off of opportunity and workloads. So never rule anything out, but like Luca said, we don't have any current plans. But that's not to say we ever won't.
Excellent. That's a good way of putting that. Absolutely. And anyway, there's React Native, and there's the tooling is getting more aligned all the time. So let's see. You never know. Let's go one step forward on the slide. So this one is more on premises, but I wanted to actually, because the question was asked on the form before the call, I wanted to actually call it down. And this was really around the comment related on supporting dynamic data on the modern SharePoint list web port. Because it is the current list still not available. I think, and obviously Luca and Pat and John can talk about this one, but obviously out-of-the-box web parts are slightly outside of the scope of today's discussion, because SharePoint Framework is actually, even though it is the underlying technology, none of us are responsible of the out-of-the-box web part as such.
So the modern list web part supports dynamic data as a producer. So you can consume list data in your own web part, or in I think the embed web part as well. What the list web part doesn't do today is allow list-to-list scenarios, because the list web part doesn't have a consuming UX yet. I know that that's on the list of things for that team to do.
And the more you guys yell on GitHub,
not on GitHub, on UserVoice.
Oh, sorry, UserVoice. Thank you very much.
Yes.
The easier is for us to advocate your desires to that.
And so from a developer platform, the list web part supports dynamic data. From a user experience perspective, that's something that still needs to get done.
Absolutely. Yeah. So technically there's a readiness, but the out-of-the-box web part, which is using SharePoint Framework behind the scenes, is not yet supporting this capability.
Consumption.
Yes. Good. Moving on questions. So new extensions. So for quite a long time in our roadmap, we've been saying new extensions. We'll have more new extensions in SBC 2019. Actually, I think it was Luca, you, not putting you on the spot, but I know that you're fine with that. Well, actually putting you on the spot. And you said that, hey, we have upcoming navigation controls and extensions coming up. Is that still the plan, and what is being expected? Anything what we can talk about in here?
So, see previous statement. The framework has been optimized and worked in order to enable that scenario and to support that scenario. Now it's a matter of the owner of that workload to enable the capability in the navigation. So again, from the platform standpoint, we are ready. All the planning is done. We need you guys to be vocal and to signal that desire to the team through UserVoice.
Not that we're trying to throw other teams under the bus. They've got huge backlogs of things that they're working on as well.
Nope.
And so
thank you.
A bunch of the things that they need from a product perspective come in at a higher priority than some of these attention. but they're on their backlog, and we're constantly working together on trying to prioritize and plan when those things will come up.
Right.
But the plan is to happen.
So plan hasn't changed. The plan is still there. The question is more on prioritization of the resources to make things happen, right?
Yep.
Good. So this one is actually what Luca you mentioned already. So going on forward on the pre-submitted questions, and this was related on the fact that and a few MVPs actually called this out also in their blog post early on. There's still elements in the SharePoint UI where we still fall on the classic experience. Can we fix that? Is it still in the plans? Because the site level installation, operation, app catalog, all of that is still forcing you to go to the classic.
Right. So this is actually slightly different. So there is the admin experience. This is the one I was talking about before, and that's we talk about that. Now, in terms of installation, yes, that's one scenario. Another thing that we were considering / investigating was to actually decouple the installation from the UX experience. So, for example, today, if you create a solution that is available immediately, so skip feature deployment equal true, the name of the attribute says you skip feature deployment, the solution is available everywhere, but you can't install artifacts, and you can take advantages of your feature as part of your SPFx component. So one of the things that we are considering, and again, that's not because we are evil that we didn't do that, but because prioritization stack exercise all the time, is to be able to say, if the admin approves something that is available globally, maybe the first time that artifacts get installed, get dragged on the page, assuming it's a web part, we start in doing all the feature installation behind the scenes. So that should reduce the ability to have a modern experience on the install. That's one thing. And the other thing is, yes, we need to be able to migrate that install and uninstall in modern list view for the site content experience. Again, not that we are evil, it's just like it's not the next thing that we have to work on, and unfortunately, we have limited capabilities in terms of engineers.
Yeah, so prioritizing the efforts for some other areas. Sorry, John.
Can apply and help us making the product even better.
Luca was basically saying, effectively, it's a resourcing discussion. However, we are hiring. So if you want to come and join the team, that works too.
Yes, I think we have now 239 people on the call still who would be interested in joining SPFx team. So let's take that discussion. This is not a job interview. But anyway, so one thing what Luca mentioned there, actually, I want to recap that because that's pretty cool. So one of the things, how do we are planning to reduce the let's say, complexity of installing and adding manually to the site is that if your application and SPPKG file is not tenant deployed, but you want to use a web part on a site, you potentially can still see it in the web part picker. And when you install that first time in a site, behind of the scenes, we would install the application on the site level as well. That's basically what Luca was saying that we're looking into potentially doing in the future. And that's actually pretty cool because that reduces the, let's say, complexity of going and installing explicitly the apps. So really cool feature as well. Now, let's actually move on the next question. And I'm just double checking. I will come back and reading Dean's comment in a second, if that's a question. Now, reusable controls from engineering. And this was something which came from one of our MVPs related on having a discussion on, hey, what would be the questions which we should ask from our engineering? So there is a high demand, obviously, for MVPs and partners and ISVs to be able to use some of the out-of-the-box controls. Do we have any plans, for example, contact card and file picker, to expose some of these as a reusable controls?
Sure. So I believe today there is a reusable control for the file picker. I don't know.
Nope.
The file browser control. It's not an SPFx control per se. It's a web control. There's two main things that we're looking at. First, so I know the live persona card has come up a few times. There's some discussions about what it means to make that available for third parties to use. And the tricky part there is that there's a bunch of initialization code and stuff that has to get done properly. And if somebody else hops in before it, it'll break the first party stuff. So it's mostly third party work side by side. The first thing that we want to look at, though, is sort of one level of control below, which is to get first and third-party fabric control use aligned, so that third-party devs don't have to bundle the fabric code with their components themselves, but they can use the same library mechanism that the first-party controls do. So that's the first place where we plan on putting engineering effort.
I think this is another thing that kind of comes down to resources as well. Like, given unlimited resources, we'd love to fund something like that. But as long as there's enough support on UserVoice for these things, it would be great as well, so that it can help sort of push the discussion around where we should allocate and fund. Regarding the file picker or the file browser that, like Pat was mentioning, there's a preview package that we did release a year or two ago. It's called @Microsoft/file-browser. It provides access to like the Graph API, file APIs, and it's a reusable React component.
And obviously there are the open source SPFx controls, which are widely used by thousands of ISVs actually and system integrators. And these are basically, but they're open source. They're not what we use out of the box. So that's a good divider on there. And there was a good question or a comment from Dean, just a note that friendlier user experience for a tenant-wide extensions configuration would be going a long way for buy-in of using extensions. So basically, this is a comment related on the tenant-wide deployment of SharePoint Framework extension and the list configuration behind of the app catalog. Are we planning to invest on there?
So for things like that, the best thing, rather than saying it doesn't do what we want or is tricky for us to do what we want, would be to sort of give an example of, hey, here's what would be better. Because honestly, I'm not sure what it means that the end user configurability needs to be improved. Like what the scenario would be, what they would envision, that sort of thing. That would be super helpful.
Makes sense. So Dean, come and have a discussion, or maybe in a GitHub, that's fine, or tech community, and loop us in, and we can actually have a discussion on the ideas related on that one. Now on Sohail,
I'll hop in 1 second. If you put it in GitHub, chances are it'll get closed right away because it's not an issue. The UserVoice is where new feature requests typically go.
This is not a new feature request.
Feel free to open up a GitHub issue and point it to there saying, hey, I've updated this stuff there.
Yep, that's fine as well. As long as we get a note where it's actually getting created, and the person behind of the UserVoice entries is anyway on the call as well. So, so that's good way of ensuring that we do know what's actually getting submitted. Now, Sohail is commenting: do we have a Git repo or GitHub repo for out-of-the-box web part, especially news web part, because they would like to extend some of the out-of-the-box features? Do I want to answer this, or do Luca or Pat want to answer the situation?
We don't have any open source first party controls right now.
Yeah, at least for now. So none of the out-of-the-box web parts are unfortunately released as an open source web part, for now at least. So you cannot actually pull them down and extend them, unfortunately. So that is not an option.
Yeah, and one of the driving things there, which goes back to I think the very first question about backwards compatibility. As soon as we say this is a supported thing that you can extend, we basically have to support that for the foreseeable future. And so there's a large cost associated with that, both in terms of engineering effort as well as locking in the experience.
Yep.
That's why it doesn't bubble up high on our list. As opposed to just the idea of, hey, here's the code that we used, have at it. That's a different conversation.
Absolutely. Now, moving on slides, there's quite a few set of questions still, and there was a comment on the submitted form which was related on, could we use SharePoint Framework for a mobile experience, and can we improve the mobile experience for applications which have been built using SharePoint Framework? The comment was quite generic, and it wasn't really that well justified, but anything what we can comment in here?
Well, so SharePoint Framework are supported in mobile in a way where, so for the mobile SharePoint app user experience, the mobile app itself basically loads the page in embedded browser. So SharePoint Framework solutions shows up there, and depending on the way this solution was developed, should be responsive. I mean, that's on top of. I mean, that's in charge of the developer itself. And for Teams, Teams Mobile Dev Preview. If you enable Dev Preview capability in Teams Mobile, you can also use SPFx Teams tab, personal tabs in Teams Mobile as well. So there is a level of supportability in the mobile. Now, just like you said, it really depends what that means.
Yeah.
Can you develop
obviously,
React Native solutions using SPFx for mobile? No, you can't. Does the mobile experiences support web-based SPFx solutions? Yes, they do. So that's
good. Coming back on the previous discussion related on first-party web parts, there's a good comment from Joel Rodriguez from Storm Technologies. Will it be possible to disable out-of-the-box web parts and extensions in case we have to build our custom solution that has an extended functionality? That's a good suggestion. So basically replacing something out of the box with a custom experience.
Yes and no. So you can do that today already for some web parts. There is the ability to disable, I believe, the Twitter web part or some of these web parts.
Yeah, the external web parts.
Yes.
Yeah.
For other non-external web parts, that's something that needs to be advocated because right now that's not the capabilities that you can.
And UserVoice again is the path through that.
Yep.
We are.
I think we have an entry on UserVoice on that one, but it's not under the dev track. It's under something else. But I can't because I've run into that one at some point.
Yeah. So don't put it in the dev track because it doesn't really apply to us or the developer platform. It's just a general user feature, which makes total sense. But that's where it goes.
Yep, absolutely makes sense. The request absolutely makes sense. Thank you, Joel, for that one. Now, taking one from the slides, so moving forward on there, if I can find my mouse, which just magically disappeared. There we go. So, overriding native SharePoint list and library form experience with SharePoint Framework. This was the number 3 in our UserVoice list, and this is the quite a kind of classic request, and people have been asking this for a while, because Power Platform is really for the end users, and it doesn't have the enterprise ALM, and then SPFx option overriding the whole experience would be what people are looking for. It seems to be growing from a demand perspective. Any plans in this side?
So it's in UserVoice. It's got lots of votes, and that lies with the team that owns the overall future and vision for how lists work. You guys have been doing right.
It is a lot of votes in the SharePoint Framework category in UserVoice because people want to have a SharePoint Framework experience in this.
Right. Yeah. So together with you, Vesa, we need to work very much with the team that own that to be sure that they understand that.
But they will have their own broad future vision on how they want lists and libraries to be extended and customized and used as the basis for apps. And so the best thing to do is work with that.
Yep, absolutely. And that's how the whole thing fall back on my table. So that's how the system works. Delegation is beautiful. Just for smiles, if nothing else. Now, there's 3 comments related on the chat window. So Srat is saying, any plans for modern SP calendar and Office 365 group calendar web parts or out-of-the-box experiences? Quick comment on that one. Yep.
Sorry, wrong team.
Yes, it is a wrong team, but quick comment on that one related on what's happening in other teams as well, is that there is a work related on work being done on the calendar experiences, and there is a work being done on out-of-the-box web parts as well. So you should be able to see some development on the calendars pretty soon, actually. SharePoint conference is coming in May, where we actually will announce at least the next batch of new features. There's a question from Jim related on are the site scripts and site designs open source? Need a group setting for create a content type action, and I'm willing to figure out how to do a pull request. Jim, site scripts and site design, again, slightly wrong team, but that's fine. And the functionality behind us, the scenes of site designs and site script is a server-side APIs functionality, so it's not open source. So there's no way for actually submitting on that code which is running behind of the scenes. So that's not an option. You can always, though, In the site designs and site scripts, you can call an Azure function, and from there you can easily call back then using whatever technologies and modify what's being provisioned. So that's the extensibility point and an extensibility option with site designs and site scripts. Now I'm going to take one again on the slides. So let me go to that screen. SharePoint Framework installed on a site hook to automate operation. Could we make this happen? It was one of the requests. So in the add-ins and apps, we have the app installed event. But with SharePoint Framework, there's no events to know when something is getting installed on a site. Any plans related on this one?
What is the scenario?
So basically, you would like to get notified when a SharePoint Framework solution gets installed on a site. And as an example, by whom?
So you want to be notified, you being who? The developer?
The developer or the add-in, the solution which is getting installed. That was the classic scenario in add-in model. So provider hosted add-in supported the app installed event. So then you knew when the solution got installed on a site, and then you were able to do operations based on those actions.
Yeah. So I mean, I could see. So this isn't on our roadmap in any way. As far as sitting on top or where we could hook into what's happening or planning, I'm not sure where the tenant-wide the webhooks. If as soon as tenant-wide ones there happen, we could look into inserting app added, app installed, app uninstalled events on top of that. But we don't have a plan for that today. And
for now.
Yeah, and just thinking about it, the code and tech that we have doesn't really lend itself easily to having it as part of the package. Because effectively you want that to be sort of a lower level event that says, hey, this happened, go do some stuff. And all we have is JavaScript in a browser to play with. So.
This is more telemetry, or is it just like...
you want to take some action.
When you install the solution in the site, or when you install the web part on the page, something like that?
Solution, when you add the solution to a
site.
Gotcha.
Or install it. I mean, yeah, you can have.
But you could conceivably do the similar thing the first time that the solution runs. At that point, your code starts working, and you should do the same thing.
But again, yeah. So interesting question. I think webhooks are probably the best place for that, particularly if you want to do like run as an app type events, not just hey, here's a browser event that I want to take advantage of. So I pay attention to what the future of webhooks.
And there's a good comment from Sohail related on, hey, Microsoft Automate or Microsoft Flow can cater that maybe potentially in future. We'll see. We would have to have some sort of a webhook or an event anyway raised. Right now that doesn't happen, and potentially before the Microsoft Flow can associate to that one either. Now let's take a few more on the pre-set questions and slides. So one of the things what we wanted to talk about definitely is the SharePoint Framework and Store. What is the latest and when? It's been on our roadmap for a long time.
Right. So the good news is that we are actively working to. So one step back. The store, Microsoft Store experience for Office and Microsoft 365 has been transitioning to app source, and that has been announced that the support for app source very recently, and the Office client experience has been started supporting app source. So there has been a lot of work on that transition to a new platform. The good news is that we are actively working to enable the ability to install SPFx solutions from app source on SharePoint. We have high hopes to be able to present something this calendar year, and I'm being generically vague because it's just a multi-team effort, but again, it's not a thinking anymore. There is an engineer in Pat's org that is actively working on that. So I can confirm that there is work going on. I can't confirm on dates yet.
Good. Let's take two more, and we are running out of time and can answer Benoit in a second. But Gautam has a good question on the chat window. I think this relates on some of the warnings, and Gautam can probably confirm that. When will the dev dependencies be updated in SharePoint Framework? What is the typical process?
Are there particular dev dependencies folks have in mind, or? We try to refresh all our build and tooling, the third-party build and tooling specifically. At the same time, we refresh anything internally. And so if folks have particular concerns, I'd be happy to take that offline in a GitHub issue or something.
Yep, the GitHub issue list is definitely. Gautam is super active on the issues across the GitHub, so he knows how to get started on that one. And the last question, and this is really hard. We have a few more which we haven't actually done, but this one actually maybe we'll actually get in here and have a hard one and the last one. So which came from MVPs, and there were some chats related on this one. Can we improve the process of Microsoft managing the SP DevDocs issue list? Yes.
Come on, Vesa, do your job. Let's prove that.
Yes, and the answer obviously is yes. We are highly aware that we need to make sure that the issue list is being managed efficiently by Microsoft, and obviously it requires multiple people helping with that. We have MVPs now. We have John has been really active. Pat has been really active. I'm helping on issues. There's we're looking into actually having a support organization coming back and helping some of the issues as well. So we're really trying to again focus on getting that process moving. We do understand that when it's an active on-site situation when something is broken, it might be frustrating that it takes time to get an answer on some of the questions which you have in the issue list, and we're trying to improve that. Anything what?
Let me chime in one thing here. It's also useful to, or important to point out, SP DevDocs is not where you should go for immediate support. It's a community-based, best effort, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
If you are running into a problem in your production environment, you should go to support, which will open a ticket and go through like the official support channel. Don't post to do post to SP DevDocs because maybe somebody else has seen the problem and knows what the solution is, et cetera, et cetera. But if you want to talk to support and go through that, get that experience, you should not go to SP DevDocs. You should go to support.
Especially when you have a premier support contract. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Now, I think that's it for now. We're running out of time. Unfortunately, there's this massive amount of questions from the community always. We will be present in Build. We will be present in SBC. We'll split the team, unfortunately, because SharePoint Conference and Build are at the same week for answering any of the additional questions. And please be active, ping us on the social media, ask the questions. We'll try to help you as fast as possible. But I think that's it for now for this call, and because we need to be conscious about the time as well. The next SharePoint Framework Community call is coming on this Thursday, so 2 days from now. We do have a really cool demo related on React-based calendar report, a custom open source calendar report, and also how to use Microsoft Craft JavaScript SDK in that call. So Darrell will be back. Darrell was there actually last week as last time in the SharePoint Framework Community call as well. So cool demos, 2 cool demos coming up on this week, and then week after that we have the SharePoint Generic Dev Community call on that Thursday. If you're looking into where to get more details related on what we do, what are the community calls, what are the different channels, what are the different portals and news and everything else, AKMS SPPMP is the address, and that will redirect you to our community pages from where you'll find more details related on open source projects and different assets, what is available for helping you. And please, please, please keep the feedback coming. We are here to help you, not to make your life obviously difficult. So we need to know where we can help you. That is our job. But thank you for this one. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, John. Thank you, Luca, for great set of answers. And I think the transparency and set of answers definitely help on people who were attending the call. We unfortunately did max out at the 250 attendees, so some of the people were unable to join. We are reconsidering the platform unless the teams will increase the limits, hopefully later this spring. We'll see what will happen, but let's get back on that one slightly later. Any last words from Luca, Pat, John?
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.